Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Mel Cunningham. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your paths to a holistic future. So welcome.
Hello and welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Vanette and I'm your host. Today, my guest is Mel Cunningham. She is an energetic leadership and empowerment coach with over 15 years of corporate experience. She has a personal journey of overcoming career, relationship, and health crises. Double board certified holistic health and wellness energetics practitioner, yoga and meditation teacher, breathwork facilitator, and Reiki Master. Passionate for helping high-achieving professionals take control of their life, both professional success and personal fulfillment. So Mel, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, let me understand a little bit of your background. So this sounds that you had different careers and what was your journey? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I have over 15 years of corporate experience, and I spent that experience in the medical arena in medical oncology. And I always like to say I kind of fell into that industry. And great industry, wonderful experience. My biggest passion is just really helping others. And through that career, I was able to really, I look at it saying, I was a patient advocate. I was able to support patients on their journey. So I worked in medical oncology. So these patients are literally fighting for their life, right? And so I am able to come in and support the physicians and the systems and, those who are taking care of the patients. And that's really where that was my drive in that industry, is being able to be a resource, for my clients that then in turn who were taking care of the patients. And also through that, it's also a very demanding industry. It's a very demanding job. And as I started that industry, you're young, you're ready to go, you're a go-getter, and you're like, okay, I'll do anything, because you want to excel, right? I mean, I'm that type A person. I'm driven. I want to excel. And so I was willing to, really do anything and everything so I could continue to excel and move up in that career ladder. And so from that, I would increase my responsibilities, my roles, my influence, and from that came additional responsibilities, which then would come additional stress, demands. And I literally, from the outside, I looked like I was living the best life ever. I mean, I had a great job, great career, great ability to just, I was traveling all over the country, and everyone's like, wow, you're doing it. Well, inside I was falling apart, and I knew something had to change, but when you're in that mode of just push, 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 drive, 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 you're like, oh, when I have some time later, I'll take care of it. Well, fast forward, boom, I like to equate it to, being hit by a Mack truck. I was taken down. And so my health took a crisis. I lost my job. My relationship fell apart. Everything came crashing and burning, everything. And I was just in awe, trying to figure out what's happening, I resorted to the old methods, right? Because I got to where I was because I continued to excel, because I continued to push, because I continued to say, okay, I got to this level, now I'll get to this level. And it was more of a mental aspect, right? And I was in bed for 3 months. I couldn't get out of bed. I was seeing people, they could not figure out what was wrong with me. They're like, oh, you just need to take a nap. You just need to rest. And I'm like, no, there's something going on here. And I was extremely frustrated because the things that I used to do weren't working. And everything I would try just, I would have like those short-term gains, and then I would come crashing back. And so after 3 months, I was finally able to get out of bed, but still extremely exhausted, still really, I mean, I was at a loss and I couldn't figure out like, what was I going to do? And like, how do I, because I was somebody who would give 150% in every aspect of my life. And now I'm barely being able to do anything. I mean, even after 3 months in bed, I could barely walk like a block because I had no energy. Mentally, I was at a loss. And so from that, I started to seek out alternative methods and approaches. And it wasn't my first time into the whole world of, energy and energetics, but it was the first time where I said, okay, I'm willing to do anything because everything else that I had done and those traditional methods were not working. And so that was my first beginning into some of the subconscious work that I do with my clients as well. And so it didn't happen overnight, but, I would say about 2 months into it, I started to feel this weight lift off of me. And I was like, I started to see glimpses of who I used to be. And I just continued on that path. And from that, that was really, I was still in the medical arena as well. And my first original thought was, I want to bring this work to those patients who are, going through their own personal journeys. And that was really my coming into this type of work, is because I said, this is another opportunity to help and support somebody on another journey. So as I went through my process, my business was born. And I said, I want to help people, my ultimate desire is to help them before they crash and burn like I did. But sometimes we need that wake up call. And for me, when I reflect back on it, it was not when I was going through it, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me change my life. It made me stop and assess what was really going on, like what was out of balance for me, because it wasn't a matter of if this was going to happen. It was a matter of when it was going to happen. And I look back at it and say, thankfully, there was no like major health, long-term health issues. I was able to shift and change my life. So the life I live today is completely different from the life I lived before. And what's amazing is I actually achieve more. I have more balance. I'm happier, and I'm able to do all that in a balanced way. And it's like I have more success as well. And so being able to see it from that way instead of that old paradigm of you just push and you just drive. And, that's because I feel like we're taught that, right? And society says that, I was actually just watching a television show the other day. And that's really what I notice is in everywhere we look, it is about that push and that drive. And you have to push to make things happen. And I'm here to tell you that that's the direct opposite, because actually when you step back and you have more ease and flow in your life and you understand what you truly desire and how you create what happens for you, it completely shifts everything and changes everything. And so from that, going from ex-corporate to moving into this role, I am just so passionate about helping others understand and realize that you actually can be, very successful in your professional life, and you can be really fulfilled personally as well. And you can have, because oftentimes we feel like we have to choose one or the other.
Yeah, wow, what an amazing story. And I can imagine that a lot of people feel the same, that they are pushing through, and even it is like this mentality, yeah, if you really want to reach a certain kind of level, you have to give up on everything. You just have to focus and push yourself through and work harder and more. And so this is definitely the mentality that is in our society, in our Western society at the moment. And I can relate to that, as I have been a business consultant, and from the outside, it looked like a jet set life. Really, like, no, it was everything there. Like I had my own company and my house and my horses and really beautiful everything. But it was living in trains and planes and hotels and having like meetings in meeting rooms where you have air conditioning, not even opening a window and anything. So for me, it was like really a hardcore life. And I ended up in a burnout as well as you did. And I was kicked out and really needed to understand, okay, what it is that I really want to truly do now. And this is helping people in becoming the creators of their own life, creating intuitive projects and being entrepreneurs. And this is something that comes in flow and in ease. And as you said, in balance, and it is not pushing through. So how did you realize that this shift was necessary from pushing to, okay, how am I aligned at the moment? Or what is it like the path that is already open that I have to walk?
Right. That's a wonderful question. And I think, when I look back at my personal journey it started with a lot of frustration, right? Because as you said, society shows us we just push, and those of us who push more achieve more, right? And so you really have to be able to step back and take that pause. And and it's so interesting because how often do we take that pause? And so for me, that was probably the hardest thing for me in the beginning on this journey, is because, first of all, I didn't know any different, right? Because everything around me was telling me, like I said, oh, you're just tired. Just take a few weeks off. Just, go on a vacation. You'll be fine. And it was really frustrating to me. I would read the self-help books. I would be like, oh, this must be what I need. Oh, I need to meditate, that kind of thing. But it wasn't really getting down to the root cause of what was happening. And so initially it started with a lot of frustration because the old methods were not working. So then I had to really take that pause and say, okay, what is really going on here? And when I reflect on it too, it wasn't like I didn't realize my life was out of balance or other people weren't telling me that. But, as a driven professional, it's really hard for us to take our foot off the gas, right? Because we're so fearful that if we do that, either we're going to be looked over for that promotion or, it's going to be seen as a sign of weakness. So for me, I had to really like get into touch with me and say, okay, what is really happening here? And that, even in my work with my clients, that is the hardest thing to do, is to take that pause and listen and say, to your point, like, how do I get into alignment with what I really want? And right. I mean, did I love my lifestyle? Sure, I loved my lifestyle. But once you realize that's why I always think you have that aha moment. We all have an aha moment of saying, okay, there's something different here, right? And so by being able to take that pause and shift and listen, which is the most hard thing to do, but it's the one thing that will shift everything. And I will say that when I work with my clients, that's one of the things we do in the very beginning is find out, where are you at? Really take an assessment of where are you at? And then what is it that you want? And that's the hardest question for most of my clients to answer. They're like, what do you mean? What do I want? Because oftentimes we don't think we have that choice. And I was in that same spot. I didn't think I had a choice. I was like, this is how it is. This is what I need to do to achieve what I need to achieve. And when I look back, it goes back to that pause to be able to say, okay, let me look at something different, being open to different possibilities with it. And so oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to open ourselves up to exploring those possibilities, those differences, because we're very externally driven. We're very influenced by what we're hearing, what we're seeing, by our neighbors, it's always, we're comparing ourselves to everything. So I think the biggest shift is when you can step back and say, what is it that I want? And listen to you, because once you really find out what's important to you and how you want to live, it goes back to what you said. Then there becomes more ease and more flow. And I watch people every single day, and sure, you're successful. Sure, you're achieving, but you're unhappy. And at any moment, it can fall apart, just like it did for me. And so until you really get in tune with what you want and what you desire, it's really hard to live in alignment with that. And we're always going to be, struggling with that. And like I said, we'll have success, but there won't be that true fulfillment. And so I think that's the biggest challenge. And for me, even in mine, is I was so frustrated, and I was so at that point of, me seeking those external solutions as well. And once when I finally said, okay, this isn't working, how can I look at this differently? That's when things started to shift and change. But
This is,
yeah,
yeah, this is interesting. Like you said, you need to have this moment of stillness to sit down and listen to yourself, but at the same time also seeing your life from different perspectives. And I think this is really difficult for most of the people because they have their concept about themselves. Like they are the person who is working in this place, and this is making up their identity. So if they are not like the wife anymore, they are not the doctor anymore or the lawyer anymore, and they are perhaps even sick. Like, who are they if there is kind of nothing of what has been their definition of their identity in the old world? So
right.
how are you helping them from perhaps being in this moment of my true vision is destroyed, I have no identity anymore because this was all connected to the past who have been, but not, I have no clarity about what it is in the future. So there's a gap somehow. How
Mhm.
do you overcome this gap, or how do you help them to overcome this gap?
Yeah, that is wonderful, because that is exactly what you said right there. That is the most challenging piece of it. And we do self-identify, and, working with high achievers, working with people who are driven like that. I mean, that's how we identify, right? That's how I identified. I was who I was by my accomplishments in my work. And then to your point, when that all comes crashing down, you're like, who am I? And so the biggest thing that when I'm working with my clients and how I help them see that is, it is taking that pause to be able to say, who am I and what is it that I want? And one of the biggest things we do initially is there's a lot of unraveling, because I feel like too, right? When that vision of us as that, CEO, doctor, lawyer, whoever that is, right? And then that crashes down. That vision was created and has been created through all of our life experiences, right? So I often say, as adults, we spend a lot of our adulthood undoing everything we learned in our childhood, right? And that's the thing. And I can see from my own personal experience, how I was influenced as a child. And so when we go back to that subconscious work, I mean, our subconscious mind runs 95% of us every single day. It's like this computer, it just tick, 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 takes, notice of every single experience, everything we hear, everything that we interact with. And that's what creates that ability for us to be, and our subconscious mind it's there to protect us, to keep us comfort, to keep us in that, like this is our status quo, right? And so our subconscious, from age 7 and by age 12, that's who we are, right? And so when we are as adults and we're acting and we're doing these things, and I think about me personally, this whole drive, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being driven, but this whole idea in my mind was I had to do more. I had to do more. And that came back from my childhood about how I was always told, oh, that was great, but you know what? You'll be better when you do this, right? Right. And it's like you keep getting this message. So then that comes into our adulthood. So one of the first things we do is we really work on that subconscious programming. And one of the challenges I feel like is sometimes we don't want to look at those things, right? Because when we do that subconscious work, we have to become vulnerable with ourselves, and we have to actually acknowledge some of the things that we probably don't want to acknowledge about ourselves, right? And the thing I always tell my clients is, you know what, this is a piece of you. This is not who you are. And the power comes in the fact that you become aware of it. The moment you become aware of it, that's where your power is, because now you get to create the change, because you can't do something that and work with something that you're not aware of. So once you become aware of that and you become aware of that cycle, that message that's happening, because 95% of our, our thoughts, we're not even aware of them. And those thoughts is what creates the emotion, which creates our actions. And so if it's just happening there on autopilot, you're sitting here thinking, well, this is just the way I am. Yes, you're right. But it's because of some programming. So we really dig deep into those programs. So whether it's negative beliefs, maybe it's inner critics, maybe it's those ongoing automatic thoughts that are happening. And those thoughts is what drives us how we act today. And so when we start to peel those layers away and we start working with that, then as a client, you start understanding that, oh, now I understand that this is why I react to this. And once again, we're doing this with all non-judgment. And that's what I love the beauty of this work as well is, even as I was going through my crisis and previous, a lot of times I get asked the question of, oh, so this is therapy. And hey, there's nothing wrong with therapy. I've been in therapy, but therapy is all cognitive and it's all us like rehashing, right? We're rehashing what we went through so that we can move forward. With this work, it's about bringing that awareness. And we don't have to do anything with it, because once our subconscious mind allows us to become aware of this, we can actually take it, work with it, process it, release it, and move forward. And then the power really comes into, back to how we get to create our life. So if we're in that state of overwhelm, anxiety, that depression, let's acknowledge it. Let's work with this. Let's process that, because that has to move through us so that we can move forward. So let's work with that. But we then get to choose. So what do I want instead of that? And that's where that power comes. And that's where, when I look at my life today, is before I felt like I was like life was what it was because that's life, right? Because I feel like so many of us believe we're like, well, this is just how it is. And we go with that flow. But really, when we start to understand that we have the power to create that. And so by clearing out those old subconscious programming and working with those limiting beliefs and working with those automatic thoughts, then we can move forward and choose differently. And that's the power. That's the power of this work, is helping people understand that, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, I look at it and I'm like, we are the culmination of every experience we've had sitting here today. And it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong, but we have the power today to choose differently and to create differently. And so by giving ourselves compassion and understanding that, okay, that's how it was. Now I'm choosing something different. And that's how I live my life today, is that was me. And I did achieve and I was successful. But now I'm going to do it my way. So that's why I always talk about how let's redefine success on your terms. And that's going to be different for everybody. But guess what? You can do this. And it's just a matter of working with and acknowledging, like, where have you been? What's been holding you back? And then what can I do now so I can create something different?
Yeah, and it is not only about the experiences we have, but it is about the stories we created around these experiences. And if we look at these stories as an adult now, they look totally different as what we made up as a child. So these stories are not even true. And understanding that all these experiences and these stories and these beliefs are in this kind of black box that we are not aware of what is stored inside. Like if you have this big box and you put everything in and more and more and more, and then you close it and you behave like that, what is stored inside. And now you are the one like putting the light in, and you can see, oh, that is there. This is why I behave in a certain kind of way. And perhaps people are even not aware how they behave, but others are aware of that, or nobody is aware of that, where it comes from. But as soon as you open this box and put light in, then you have the choice to de-story what you have created around a certain kind of experience. And then, of course, make a conscious decision. Okay, next time I come into a situation that somehow triggers me, am I willing to react the same? Or do I have the choice to stop for a moment and then go into another direction? And of course, then you will create a totally different life.
Exactly. And I love what you just said there, because that's the power. That's the power of us. That's the power of intention. That's the power of us being able to choose. And, oftentimes I find that, like I said, it's hard for us to look inside, right? It's very easy for us to blame somebody else. It's very easy for us to say, oh, it is just that way. Oh, it's because of this. And it's hard for us to take that responsibility and for us to look inside. So like to your point about that, it's really hard because we have to acknowledge some of that. And once again, the biggest piece is acknowledging it with grace, because it's not who you are. And to your point about, is this true? We make these stories up in our mind, which come from the subconscious, which come from those experiences, those stories. And it's so amazing to me about when we really start to peel those layers. And for me, my personal, I could talk for hours about the layers and the things that, the healing that I have done, but it is incredible how entwined those stories are, which then, to your point, make us show up a certain way. And when you really start to acknowledge and say, well, is this true? Is this true? Is this really true? And then being able to work, and that's through the work that we do, is, we start to show, because to your point, whatever we believe or whatever we think, we will find it. We can always find evidence for whatever we're thinking. So that's the other power of this, is so then we start peeling that away and say, okay, is this really true? And then, when we want to move to that other direction, start finding evidence for what it is that we're looking for. Because oftentimes it's just that old programming going on that we weren't even aware of. And that is what I think is so amazing, is when I work with my clients and it's like, I literally see like the light bulb go off for them and they're like, aha, like this. And that's why I always say we have the power, and that's the power, because to your point, then we consciously get to choose and decide what it is that we want. And it's hard. I'm not going to say that, I think sometimes people shy from this, and I did it myself. I literally resisted this because I was so cognitively in my head saying, well, no, this is what worked for me before. If I just set the goal, do the action, I'm going to achieve it because I've done it time and time again. Well, guess what? That's that push, right? And it goes back to what you were talking about, alignment, is it will work and we'll get there. But eventually something's gonna shake it. Something's gonna happen because we're not in that true alignment. So when we step back and we start to understand, what is it that I truly want? What are those triggers? And being willing to acknowledge those triggers and then consciously choose different, it's amazing. And that's the thing, is my clients, I was talking to a client the other day, and same thing. She runs a team, very stressful environment, all this going on. And she came to me because she said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I feel like my life is out of control. Her team is, they're not working together. It's like this toxic environment that's happening within the company. And then her personal relationship, she's like, we're fighting all the time. This isn't working. And so same thing. She's like, what am I doing? And so when she finally said, okay, what am I doing? And the thing is it's not, what am I doing? It's just, I'm open to something different because something's happening here and I can't figure it out. And that was the same position I was in, is I'm like, I can't figure this out. What's happening? And then that's where it goes back to the power of energy, right? Because we are energetic beings, and it is all about what we're putting out. And so by working with her one-on-one, she started showing up differently, to your point about that. She started showing up, choosing how, instead of, if something happened, and then there became a crisis at work, her old way was she would blow up and everyone would like hide because they're like, oh no, we don't want to get in the path of that tornado. And then now she's like, oh, okay, this happened. What are we going to do about it? And it's in a very more, calm, balanced manner to where she can handle that. Because I'm not sitting here saying that life isn't going to throw us a curveball, but it's all about how we respond to it, right? And now her team is sitting here going, okay, what's going on with you? There's something happening. What's happening? You're different. Now, guess what else is happening? Her team is showing up differently. Now they're working together. Now they're coming together as a unified team. Now they're like, okay, when a crisis comes up, they're like, okay, let's double down. Let's figure out, how do we do this? Instead of having chaos, now there's more calmness. And now they're working through those things. And it comes back to what you mentioned, is it's about how do we, once we shine that light, and then it's like, okay, how am I going to choose to show up here? Because once we change how we show up in the world, everything else around us changes. Now, we can't control others around us, but once again, we go back to, it is all about energy. And so, it's about energy, it's about vibration, it's about frequency. And so what are we putting out is what we're going to attract. And so by us understanding that, yes, that was then, now I'm choosing new. That's where we can create that change.
Also, what is in there, what I heard is, one aspect is to have clarity on what I don't want anymore, but this doesn't bring us to where we want to be. Like, you can try that. Go into a taxi and tell the taxi driver, I don't want to be here. He says, okay, yeah, this is my job. I can bring you somewhere. But as long as you don't tell him where he wants you to bring, he will not drive. So you have to get clarity on, where is it that I want to go to? What is my vision? Where is it that is kind of, my alignment, my path? And as you said, now, as soon as you get clarity on that, things will fall in the right place, and synchronicities will happen, and things that you can't even imagine, that are even bigger than the vision that you already had, will appear. And for me, it was, for example, at the moment I decided I'm going to stop my old life and I need to go somewhere else and create something new. I got this message from a company that I can go to Madeira for having holidays there, and everything was included. And it was the place where I'm living now. And it was really like, I was never thinking to go to Madeira and leave everything behind, but it was really, okay, now I feel this is the place. This feels energetically so aligned with me. I feel so, like home here, and feel so balanced that I really, I gave up everything. Like, I closed my company, I sold my house, my horses, my car, everything. And I just left with 3 cats, a laptop, and a suitcase to come here to Madeira Island and restart everything. Sitting at the beach, thinking about, what is it that I really want to create now after this burnout, and recreating everything. And I think as soon as this is started, then you can see, okay, people come in your life, circumstances happen that you read about something, or that you get offers, and it feels so different being here right now than it was before. It is no pushing. It is really, okay, let me step into the quantum field. Let me see what is there, what is already here in the field that wants to manifest right now. And this is a step.
I love that, because that's the other piece of the work that I do, is we talk about, there is something bigger than us, right? So like, when you're talking about the quantum, like, we don't have to do this all by ourselves, but we do have to be clear, and we do have to understand, like, what is it that I desire? And then, like you said, then be open, because so much of it is here, like, right? Because we can only see, a small, minute piece of the possibilities, right? And so we sit there and go, well, there's no way I could sell everything and move and, live and shift and change my life, right? Because we're cognitively trying to think that, like, we can't do that. But it is that whole piece of being open to those possibilities and being able to see that. And a big piece of being able to do that is to take that pause and say, okay, what is it? Right? Like just being open to that. But you also have to, I love your point about the taxi driver, because, right, it's like, think about the GPS, right? Like, I mean, you have to know where you're going. And it's not a matter, we don't have to figure out how we're going there. We just have to know what we want. Like, right, what is it that I want? And then allow the quantum to support us in that ability. And that's the other piece is, we as humans feel like we have to navigate it. And trust me, I was that person. And you know what? There are still times I do it where I'm like, I have a goal in mind and I'm like, okay, this is how I want it to happen. Right. And then you get all disappointed and you're like, wait, it didn't happen that way. Oftentimes it happens even way better than we think, but we get frustrated. So it is a lot of this work of getting out of our head into our heart, into our, being connected to ourselves to be able to say like, what is actually possible and being open to that, right? Like, I just had this thought when you're talking about the taxi, because there are times when I'll get into, the Uber and I know where I'm going, right? Like, I'm like, okay, take me to point B. And I know where I'm going. I know where I'm at and I know where I'm going. And then they go a different way than I think. And it's funny because sometimes I'll catch myself, well, there's more than one way. And so often, though, we get in our mind about, well, this is the way we think it's supposed to happen. This is the way. And I think a lot of times, too, especially in the corporate arena, right? I mean, it's all out there across industries of like, this is the path for corporate success, right? And I'm here to tell you that there is multiple ways to get to that same path. So same thing, like that taxi, if you're going from point A to point B, there's multiple ways to get to point B. And we have to just allow ourselves to be open to that. And it is, I mean, it can be challenging because we are breaking those habits. We are breaking those, perceptions that we have because, it is. And I always say too, when that's happening, it's because we're too focused on the external, right? Because and it's natural for us to do that. So when we can come back in and say, okay, right, there are multiple ways to go from point A to point B. And just because I would choose, option B doesn't mean it's better or worse than option A. And it's just us allowing and creating that space for us to, we have our idea, we have that clarity, but also to be open to say, well, how does that look? Because oftentimes, like I think about healing is, people think, oh, we're going to go from here, we're going to go from here. Well, the healing journey is like this. It is just constantly up and down. And, there is not one straight path to it. And so we also have to be, and allow ourselves to be open to say, okay, how is this going to unfold? And for you, you were open to that. Like, you're like, okay, I know I can't do this. Now, what does this look like? And then you're like, oh my gosh, this opportunity came to me. This person reached out to me. And that's the beauty of this is when we start to kind of step back and allow, because there is a higher, whatever you believe that is, there is a higher power helping us, supporting this. So we don't have to do it all by ourselves. And that's another thing, I really focus on helping people understand is, we're in a culture of, I have to do this. And I know for me, I mean, that was a big piece of what created my burnout and my stress is I felt like I had to do everything because if I was going to achieve what I wanted to achieve, I couldn't depend on anybody else. I had to do it. And so by being able to open yourself up to those possibilities, then it's more ease, it's more flow. And when you're in alignment, and I know it's so hard. It's so hard for us to give up that and be like, okay, I'm just going to, you still have to keep doing and having that action, right? But not being so rigid. And I mean, I'm here to tell you that there are many times I have to check myself and be like, okay, pause, Mel. Let's allow this to unfold. the way it's meant to unfold. And like I said, most of the time it unfolds even more beautifully than we thought it was going to.
Yeah, and it is not that we need to know about the how. It is that we need to set the intention, what we would like to achieve, and send out the signal. And this is again about the energy, about the frequency. And then we can see it comes from this side and this side. Like if you book a hotel, you will not check every day if the booking is still there. You are clear that when you go to the hotel, it is booked and you will have your hotel room. So, and perhaps this room is not available that you booked. They have the bigger one, the suite for you. And you will say, oh, this is even better. Let me take the suite for the same price. Of course, I will take this upgrade. Yeah, and perhaps the life that you're living is, willing to deliver already that. Something that is even better than you can imagine what is already there in the quantum field. And it's just like, oh, I have this gift for you. Take it. And you know, I want this old one.
I know. Sometimes I feel like we get in our own way, right? Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And it's just being open to those possibilities and being able to say, really it's about that inner dialogue, right? Like being willing to connect with yourself. And think about like a child, right? Think about when they have an imaginary friend or they have some, I love hearing kids and their imagination and their stories, right? Because they haven't been influenced by life yet, right? And so I always think about that is like, let's be curious about this. Like, what is possible, right? Because when you think of a child and they just allow their imagination. And once again, it goes back to that subconscious, because at that age, that's where their subconscious is, like those imprints haven't been put there yet, right? So they're able to just think and, they, like, I just love, like, it always like makes me smile when you hear these little stories. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cute because they haven't been imprinted yet, like, right? And that's the thing where for us as adults, like, let's bring back that childlike experience in our life and be curious. Like, what would that look like? Right? Like, I think about, one of my dreams is to spend time abroad. And I was just talking about this last night and I'm like, I will be doing that. Like I have a vision where I will be living in Mexico. At this point, my vision is not I want to live there full time, but I'm like 3 to 4 months out of the year. I have a vision of I am going to be living in Mexico. And I will tell you, my old self would have thought that was the craziest thing ever. My old self would have been like, you can't do that. Why would you do that? That's crazy. And my new self is sitting here going, no, I'm doing that. And, I have been fortunate to have these moments. And that's the whole thing is you keep putting that energy towards that. You keep focusing on that. And it's going to play out, right? Now, how it's going to play out, when it plays out, I don't know. But more and more things, to your point about, before, where things are showing up and it's there and I can see it and it's super close, right? And that's the part is just being open to that and being open to say, yeah, let's get curious. Let's figure this out. But I can tell you, my old self would not have been open to that. So it does create that little shift, for you to be open to possibilities and to kind of get out of that routine, that point of let me plan that all out, right? Because I'm sure many of us as adults, we had a vision, right? And we're like, this is how my life is going to play out. This is what I'm going to do. And then when it doesn't happen, and I know from my personal experience, that's kind of the thing that happened to me is I was like, wait, what? What's happening? How is this not? And then you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing for it. And so by being able to just step back and say, okay, maybe there is a different way, right? And being open to that, then those things start to open up for you.
Yeah, and not having a concept. Like for me, I reinvented myself several times. I started in science. I'm educated in medicine. I'm an engineer in chemical environmental technology. I worked as a consultant. I worked as a spiritual healer. So I have different aspects that come together. And if you look into my bio, it looks really strange. But it was always like evolving myself, coming to the next step, learning a lot of different aspects in science, in spirituality, in business. And it comes out all together in one point now. And I think, okay, it was like creating a puzzle. Like I had this piece and I had this piece, and now I get the clearer picture of what I can do if I bring everything together, being like an intuitive innovation strategist. This is it. And if you don't have the concept of what is the end, but you see, okay, there are pieces and you can bring this together. And if you understand, okay, if I put this and this and this, now I'm getting a clearer picture. And from there, I can create and reinvent myself again, my life again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is. It's just about being open to that, right? Because I can, as you were sharing that, I'm sitting here thinking, that's probably part of my journey, right? It's because I resisted, right? It's easy, right? What is it? Hindsight. It's easy for us to see something after something has happened. And I can think of little moments leading up to my, crisis that if I would have taken that moment to pause and listen, maybe I wouldn't have crashed and burned. Like, I don't know. I can't go back and I can't put those pieces together. But those were little things. Now I look at it and go, those were little, it's like those little taps. And hello, hello. It's like that little whisper saying, here, to your point about putting all the pieces together. And so for whatever reason, my journey was I had to crash and burn, right? But that crash and burn then created, because sometimes I think I could have shortcutted myself. If I would have listened earlier, I wouldn't have had to go through that. But to your point about that is you bring all this together. And that's what I think is so beautiful about this in my personal journey is now I'm able to work with corporates and bring in that knowledge, that experience, and being able to come from that perspective. But you know what? Had I not gone through this, had I not gone through this training, had I not shifted, reinvented myself, would I be doing that? Right. And the whole piece of it is I go back to really, this is my passion. My passion is helping and serving others and helping others realize that, we have power, we have control. And by being able to now work in the corporate environment and, whether I work one-on-one, whether I work with the groups, it's helping others understand that there is another way. And for me, I think that was my lesson, right? Because I was so adamant there was one way and that I was on that path of this is who I was and this is what I was going to accomplish. And I had to learn that so that I could share that with others, right? And to your point, being able to pull all of this training, all of these experiences together, that's what makes us unique, right? That's what brings that uniqueness so that we can share it with others. And then, by others being able to learn from our experiences as well. And then helping to create that change, right? Like you're creating change in the world. I'm creating change in the world. And that's the whole piece is for us to be open to experience that and say, what else is out there? And I love the fact that, especially in the corporate environment, when I'm talking with somebody and they're so adamant about the practical stuff, right? Like, oh, I just need my team to sell more, or I just need, we need to just get through this project. And the way I look at it is I'm like, you will do that. And you'll probably actually do more than you think you will. And you'll actually achieve, not only will you, meet your goal, but you'll actually exceed your goal. But we're going to focus on these things. And it's a real shift for them to understand because I said, the reason this is happening is not because of those practical things. It's not, for example, sales. The reason your salespeople are not selling is not because of the things that you think they are. It's about those internal things that we're talking about here. It's about us being able to be whole and have us be emotionally, mentally, physically balanced so that we can then show up and do our job in an alignment. And when you have people who are in alignment, incredible things happen. And that's the piece. And so I think, to your point about that is, life is a journey. And I experienced all those things so that then I can support others and I can bring this awareness for others. Same thing with you, right? And being able to but we had to be open to that as well, right? We had to be open to understand, okay, this wasn't really what I thought it was going to be, but then we were able to experience that. And then from that, then now we're able to support and help others. And that's what I think is the beauty of, understanding the energy, the psychology, the science part of, there's more here. We just have to be willing to explore it.
I think it is like the experiences we have, and with that, the toolbox that we created for ourselves, and of course now use for our clients as well. Because this is not speaking from theory. This is speaking from own experience and how we helped ourselves going through these processes. And now we can use all these tools that we have learned. And you have a lot of certificates, as we have heard in the bio already, use them for the clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's just that whole thing of being, and like I said, I was just talking about this the other day, and I said, I am really grateful for my personal experience because honestly, I don't know where I'd be today. And to your point about that is it's an opportunity for personal growth, but then also how do we support others? And for me, that's what really drives me is being able to help others see another way and see that, you know what, you don't have to be exhausted, overwhelmed, choosing between, professional success and your family or enjoying life. And you don't have to choose these things, but we do have tools and resources that can support you so that you can show up differently. And then you can have more ease and you can have more flow in your life. And for me, I was told so much before I crashed and burned, like, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing it that way. And I think about that when I work with my clients is because, right, for me now I understand the disconnect because the disconnect is we're so in our mind, right? And we're so trained that we can just push through anything. And so by going through this experience and then having the tools and, and that's the other thing is, I would kind of joke, I'm a certificate collector. I'm always wanting to learn. And the reason I want to learn is because, right, I truly believe there's opportunity for us in everything that we can, how do we level up? How do we evolve? How do we, even in your experience, right? You've been in all these different areas and you've learned and you've been able to take it all together, blend it beautifully, and to be able to support others. And that's where I feel that's the blessing out of my crisis, because I have no idea where my life would have been, where it would be today. I have no idea where my health, because my health wasn't at an all-time low. And I'm excited. I was, not then, but I'm excited about the journey it's taken me on. Same thing is, it opened me up to possibilities. And so by being able to continuously learn and understand and evolve and understand the workings of, it all comes back to that mind-body connection, right? And when we look at that, we have that power, we have that control. And so often we choose to give that away. So by being able to help others understand that we don't have to give that away, that we decide and because it's our mind, it's our body, right? But we give it away all the time. And to your point, that's from experience. I get it. I understand it. But we do have to consciously decide. And we do. And I always say, it gets easier, right? Because once we become aware of these things and then we consciously choose differently, and then we're choosing how we show up, we're choosing how we're, whether we're nourishing our body, our mind, we choose those things. And you know what? Just as much as the stress, the overwhelm, all of that, we're like, that's just how it is. Well, no, that's how it is because it's what you're used to. It's the norm, right? But just as that's the norm, you can create a new norm. And that's what I love about it, is being able to, and I look at that because, that was the big aha for me, to be able to say, wait, no, you've given way too much of your power to other things, other resources, external stuff. And by being able to do this for others and help others see that, that's what I get excited about. That's where, because I feel like the more people who become in tune to this, it's going to change our world. And that's where it all comes from, right? And that's where we create, because it's not just about personal change. It's about how do we influence those close to us? How do we influence our family? How do we influence our community? How do we influence the world? And when we come back and we start to understand that we have that power, and that when we become aligned in our mind and our body, anything is possible.
This is so powerful. So if people are now excited to come into your magical world because they feel that they totally resonate with what they have heard in our conversation, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
Yes. So on any of the socials, I am at Now in Zenergy. And so Facebook, Instagram, my website is melcunningham.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well at Mel Cunningham. And so you can reach out on any of the socials, website, LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm excited. I mean, if this does resonate, if any of this resonates, I would love to connect and, first and foremost, just support you. I mean, that's the big piece. Is sometimes I feel like, maybe we're having a moment, or we're feeling like something needs to change, but we don't really know what. Let's have a conversation, because I think about my experience, and really I look at it where there was a lot of people saying, oh, just deal with it. Oh, do this, where I want to be able to provide that space for just a conversation. And so whether or not it's right for us to work together, I'm here to support. I'm here to provide that space for you to just figure, allow it, because that's the big thing, is I feel like we don't even allow ourselves the opportunity to say, I don't even know what's going on, but let me just release it. And so I'm here to even support that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will put all the links in the show notes. And last but not least, is there anything that you would like to share that I didn't ask you?
No. I mean, the one thing I would like to say is just remember, if there's any takeaway, just remember that you have the power within you, and that we get to consciously choose and decide. And just because something was a way doesn't mean it has to be that way moving forward. And I just think that's so important, because that's where we become the co-creator. And just remember, you don't have to do this all by yourself. There's a bigger divine piece that's happening for you. And be curious. Open yourself up to that possibility, because you never know what will transpire for you.
Yeah, so amazing last words. Thank you so much, Mel, being my guest today on this show and sharing all your wisdom. It was a pleasure for me speaking with you today.
Thank you. I so enjoyed it myself.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.